All right, joining us right now, Will Hild, Executive Director of Consumers Research. He was sort of ahead of the curve here many years ago when we first met, and we've had him on a regular basis to talk about the wokeification of your corporate boardrooms. You know, why does American Airlines decide to throw down with, you know, the Democrats on the election laws in Georgia, or Coca-Cola for that matter? Why are they jumping on board at Target with trans policies and things like that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any business sense. And, well, Will Hild calls them out on it and explains exactly how these corporate boardrooms have been corrupted. And he joins us now. Will, Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining us.
Merry Christmas. Great to be with you again. All
right, so your latest an examination here of what's going on with sort of these woke policies go well beyond just the corporate boardroom and goes to one of the largest organizations in Washington, D.C. that is supposed to be representing these companies and free market ideas. It's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. What is it you've discovered here?
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, instead of being the advocate for free markets and free enterprise that they were created by former President Taft to be, they've basically become an arm of the Democratic Party. And one of the things we discovered, or many things we discovered over the last, few months of doing this investigation, is not just that they have sort of been carried along by the wokeification of corporate America, as you accurately described. They have been an advocate for it. And when you look specifics, during the post BLM craze of the last 5 years, they've started advocating for race-based discrimination in hiring and promotion. They themselves engaged in racially discriminatory grant making. They gave out grants solely to black-owned small businesses. So they were going out there and basically giving people money based on their skin color and advocating for their own members to do the same, both externally but also internally in their hiring and promotion, pushing DEI. They allowed a group called the Legal Council for Legal Diversity to come and advocate to their members that they base who does their legal work, their outside legal work, on what kind of firms are doing DEI and how much of it. So it is unfortunately become a huge pusher of the racially and sexually discriminatory policies that we've seen infiltrate corporate America. It turns out the woke chamber has been a big pusher of this.
So, Will, here's a couple of things here I don't understand. I have one more follow-up here, Carrie, before I let you in on this. But it seems to me that the same movement that supported defund the police and all of the so-called criminal justice reform legislation that ended up sort of degrading basic policing in most of our cities around this country, those laws that you're telling me the chamber was sort of aligned with and pushing on their own, those laws ended up hurting businesses, hurting small businesses, hurting entrepreneurship. How many businesses closed because of theft and shoplifting and all of these things that were sort of tolerated and allowed and looked the other way because of the defund the police criminal justice reform movement? That seems like the antithesis of what the chamber is supposed to be about.
That is such a great point, Larry, because it really gives away the game. The argument, the sort of the stereotype that people have of the chamber, even as a negative, right, is that they're these big business, whatever is good for the bottom line. They don't care about people, okay, but it's all about the money. Well, in truth, when you look at the policies that they've been pushing, it's not good for the bottom line anyway. For example, they advocated in favor of, and still on their webpage, the Equality Act, which would have been a whole new round of HR type, Civil Rights Act type Title IX stuff that would have exposed corporate America to all kinds of new lawsuits and litigation and liabilities. Yet they pushed it because they've become woke. They've become a arm of the far left wing of the Democratic Party. And to your point, if they really cared about corporate America, they would run as far away from BLM as they could, and certainly if they cared about small businesses who were absolutely devastated by the push to defund the police, to not prosecute shoplifting and petty theft in California and other woke places. And so they completely are derelict to their duty defending small businesses. And even when it comes to, federal legislation, they're advocating in favor of things that would increase the liability of their members, which, to your point, really shows that their true master at this point is the Democratic Party, not even corporate bottom line in some sort of Gordon Gekko stereotype. They don't care about free enterprise, and they don't even care about their own members.
Well, one thing that I feel like has been encouraging in the last, really the last year, 2025, is that I feel like we've had this push away or the step back from DEI and from the corporate woke. I feel like there's a lot of businesses out there that are at least signaling publicly that they want to go back to neutral, that they don't want to be involved in the political tug of war. Do you think, am I crazy? Is that just a misperception? Or do you feel like this is, they're just hiding and they're lying in wait and want to revert back to their woke ways? Or do you think we're making real progress?
I think we're making progress in the sense that they're not bragging about it anymore. Well, it's a little too early to see whether they've actually cut out the activities themselves internally. A lot of publications that cover the war between consumers research and the woke corporate America, when they get quotes from people inside the belly of the beast, so to speak, one of the sort of recurring choruses that we hear is that we're waiting to see. I tell all my people, whether they're pushing net zero or DEI or LGBTQ nonsense, that now isn't the time to be bold. It's the time to wait and survive. So I believe that they are laying in wait, and that they are, if a different administration were to inhabit the White House, you would see a lot of this stuff come back. And so that's why it's so important that we get to nodes that are supporting this, like the Chamber of Commerce, across all of their membership, and get them to fix what they're doing, so that there isn't this support system for this nonsense. You have this almost like woke industrial complex pushing this stuff. That needs to be dismantled.
We're speaking with Will Hild, Consumers Research, and by the way, you've set up this woke alert now, which I think is really good, and I like that when it comes to businesses and embracing these policies. Let's go back to the first statement you made. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, founded by President Taft. He was a Republican, a pretty good Republican. I mean, he can't help the fact he was born in Ohio. Nobody's perfect, and he didn't have any control over that. But beyond that, I mean, the Chamber of Commerce and the Republican Party of that era, they were sort of aligned against the New Deal, FDR sort of, quasi-socialization, if not a full socialist agenda that could have creeped even deeper than it already had in the federal government and in our economy. That's what the Chamber has always fought against. What's happened over there?
That's exactly right. And if you look back at their founding documents and the concept behind it, it was the idea that these companies would appreciate the extent to which the free enterprise system, not just the power of incumbent players that are already existing to build America, but the idea that future players that aren't even there yet, it's important we make sure that they have the ability to start their businesses and grow and be nurtured by the political and legal environment. And they've completely abandoned that. I think what happened was about 15, 20 years ago, they decided to start taking the support of conservatives for granted. They knew that, generally speaking, conservatives would never criticize corporate America, and they got away with a lot because of that. And so what then that allowed them to do was start currying favor. They became really the Chamber of Compromise rather than the Chamber of Commerce, because they would go to the Democrats, they would go to the left and say, listen, we'll help you out on this thing, or we'll support you on this thing if you'll just keep lowering our corporate tax rates and whatnot. And, the conservatives won't like it, but what are they going to do? They to your point, it's sort of almost been embedded. This is obviously dying quickly or changing quickly, but it had been embedded in the conservative mindset that you always support corporate America because of that history that you just articulated. That is gone, and I think obviously you're seeing a populist right within the conservative movement move that. But that's what their calculation was. We can take conservatives for granted and do whatever we need to do with Democrats to get favors.
Well, one thing I know for sure is that people at the Chamber of Commerce listen to this show. We've had them on years ago. They haven't been on in a while, but we welcome them back to sort of explain this and sort of respond to Will Hild and Consumer Research's data here and what they discovered. We welcome that conversation because we'd love to bring them back to where they should be. Will, thanks, man. Always good to talk with you.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
It is.